At the very beginning, we are shown the supreme goddess who is looking for a suitable person among the population of the earth, and it seems she has found him. The action moves to the workers who praised Mr. Sato's skill for doing his job quickly. They thought that he was the fastest person who works in their company, and maybe in the whole world, just like Flash. Mr. Sato asks the others to check the operation of the system, and it's time for him to go home because he has finished his work. Passing by other workers, they discussed him, saying that although he was an excellent worker, he was clearly not handsome in face. The guy clearly doesn't care about their words because he already knows that he didn't show his face, but wanting to go to the restroom to cry again, strange things begin to happen. Suddenly, the room completely disappears, and Mr. Sato turns out to be in some space completely consisting of light. While he was trying to look around and understand what the hell was going on here, the supreme goddess had already appeared behind him. The girl immediately began to question him, but he could not understand why the girl could know his name, and she just starts grinning and says that she knows absolutely everything about him. In fact, the moment the boy opened the door, he immediately went to the next world from a heart attack. Mr. Sato sat in complete shock because he had just been told that he had gone to the next world. It was painful for the girl to say this because she had simply been inactive for many years. But extending her hand to the main character, she asks him for help, because now the world needs him most of all. He had to play a very important role, and she would be offended if he just died without fulfilling his destiny. In return, she would fulfill any of his wishes. The main character remembers his childhood and how he loved to watch cartoons about superheroes, and after he lost all his hair, he had another desire. At one point, he simply cannot stand it and shouts out that what he most wants is to look like a real handsome man and save the lives of other people in the summon suit. The goddess was clearly surprised that the main character really wants this, and then begins to grin as if it was her secret plan. After that, she says that let the guy's dream finally be fulfilled, after which a yellow aura appears around him, which means that now it's time for them to say goodbye. In parting, the girl wishes him good luck, because the main character will have to survive in a new, completely unexplored world. In the next frame, we are already shown a young blonde man who is trying to see the sun through his fingers. He couldn't understand what the hell had just happened and what strange place he found himself in, but his thoughts were interrupted by screams about some hero. It turns out that this is a girl nun who is looking for a person who will save them, and finally she found the young master. She tells the guy that the queen is looking for him for an important conversation, and it seems that she was just in time. Next, the action moves to the city to a busy market, but our hero has to hide his identity while he walks next to the nun. The girl bowed to him and said that her name was Uluru. She came to the boy because the supreme goddess told her about the prophecy. While they were sitting calmly on the ground, the girl offered to take the blonde to the castle to meet the queen. The main character behaved rather strangely all the way, and Uluru clearly became worried about him. The boy seemed to be in his own thoughts. Meanwhile, he remembered the words of the goddess that the fate of the new world was now in his hands, but he could not understand what he needed to do. The nun asks that the main character not worry so much because first he needs to go up to the castle, where the queen will tell him what to do. The nun's words. But he is interested in finding out what place he ended up in. She tells him that this place is called the Country of the Nile. Suddenly he realizes that this place looks very strange because girls of different races live here, but there is not a single man except him. This thought horrified him. He begins to look around and realizes that wherever he looked, there were beautiful ladies everywhere. But suddenly, some red-haired girl appears in front of him. She came here to buy treats, but the nun could not understand why she was so far from home, completely alone. The nun asks the girl to quickly buy sweets and return home as soon as possible. The girl with red hair was happy and ran to the shops. Uluru. She says that she has very important things to do now, so she will return to her later, but the girl notices that something is wrong with the man in the hood. Suddenly, she just jumps up and begins to tear off the hood from our main character. From such force, he even manages to fall to the ground. Of course, all the girls immediately gathered around the boy because it's usually impossible to meet men here. The girl understands that things are not so bad. Her main task is to deliver the reborn protagonist to the castle, but she is still not doing well. Amy for forgiveness, but she cannot do otherwise because this is a very important mission. Meanwhile, a whole crowd had already gathered around our boy who had never seen the guy, but he could not understand why he was in the spotlight like Elon Musk. Having heard only one word from the boy, the girls were shocked that he could talk. For them, he was like a museum exhibit or an animal in a zoo. Suddenly, one of the girls decided to come up to the elf's ears and get a better look at the main character, but his face was all sweaty from nerves. While the main character felt like a rock star at a concert, the nun told him that it was time to take a break and focus on the main mission. The blonde understood that he would not be able to get away from such a crowd on his own, and he began to beg for Uluru to help him. Suddenly, the silhouette of another beautiful girl appears, who is trying to understand what the hell is going on here. It turns out that this is a night girl with beautiful white hair, of course. Everyone seeing her menacing gaze fell silent at that very second. Noticing the main character, she immediately orders her assistant knights to grab him and take him to the castle. Of course, the girls were upset because they decided to take the only guy in this city away from them, and that lady with white hair ordered to put a bag on the blonde. In the next frame, our main character was already in the castle with a bag on his head, kneeling in front of the Queen of the Nile country herself. The knights say that they carried out her order, and the queen asked them to quickly remove this rag from his head. She wanted to see his face. Seeing the main character live, she was surprised because he turned out to be an incredibly cute and handsome guy. The queen thanked the knights and the nun for being able to bring the boy to the castle. She decides to introduce herself. Her name is Enfort Terius, and she is the queen of this state. After she asked the name of the main character, he wanted to say his name from his past life, but decided to call himself Shuga. She begins to tell him about the problem for which he was brought here. As he could already notice that only women live in her country, this is a very big problem for them. Because mostly only girls are born, and the population of the country is not increasing. They simply cannot make the number of people in the state increase, and at this rate the country will simply disappear. After which she takes him by the hand and asks for help. The queen asks him if she can be brave enough to ask the main character to do a favor for her. He doesn't think much and agrees. Enfort asks the main character to play Monopoly with all the girls in the state, and then he will be able to save the whole country from extinction. Having made the face of a real Sigma, he takes on such a heavy burden and says that he will cope with such a task. The girl was shocked that the blonde agreed to her request so easily. The knights began to jump for joy because now their state would not perish, and Queen Enfort thanked the main character for giving them such a wonderful gift. But suddenly the blonde saw the disapproving glances of a nun and a knight's girl with white hair. And suddenly the realization came to him that everything was not as simple as he thought. The actions are transferred to a huge room in which the boy will now live, but he was clearly not happy about this because he was just crying, not understanding what to do now. He remembers the queen's words that he would have to play Monopoly with every person in this state. He could not understand how he agreed. But now the main character is in a simply terrible situation. At one moment, he is simply seized with panic because the blonde does not know how he will have to carry out such an order. Now the responsibility for the future of the entire country lies on the boy's shoulders. Remembering his past life, he realizes that he was never able to communicate normally with girls, even when he placed an order at McDonald's, and now he will have to play Monopoly against the whole country. Elven ears and horns on her head comes into the room and says that the queen has personally appointed her as the main character's maid. Goes somewhere, he will be his personal assistant. And now he has dinner with the queen herself, and therefore they must put the blonde in order so that he looks in accordance with royal etiquette. The action moves to the royal room where there were many hot springs. The main character clearly liked this place. The girl couldn't understand why the boy was acting so strangely, but he was just nervous. Elle asked him not to be so tense because he was going to have dinner with the queen herself. She tells the main character to behave more calmly because the queen is not going to kill him, but just wants to eat with him. Noting that the main character has very beautiful blonde hair, she simply pours a bucket of water on him. Elle invites him to look in the mirror after such procedures, and the blonde was simply in shock because after he was reborn, he became a real handsome man. Of course, the girl decides to make fun of him by saying that the guy is a real handsome guy, but he just can't believe what he sees. He remembers himself from a past life when he was fat, scary, and without hair, and now he looks like Leonardo DiCaprio. Realizing that he is now a handsome man from Forbes magazine, he decides to continue all the cosmetic procedures to make his beauty even more beautiful. Before arranging a meeting with the queen, he decided to relax in the hot springs and fully accept the fact that he was no longer a freak, but a real handsome man. Suddenly, he starts having a panic attack again, and seeing this, a girl with pink hair asks how she can help him in such a situation. In fact, our main character himself wants to help other people, but cannot believe that he can be useful to someone. Because of this strange feeling, he constantly feels depressed. He himself became too anxious after his rebirth. For this, the main character simply hates himself, but the girl simply smiles brightly at him and says that this is completely normal, because this is just a new stage in his life. Seeing how the beautiful lady smiles warmly at him, the main character understands that he is not in the most terrible situation and accepts his fate. The action moves to the royal table on which there was a lot of delicious food that the boy happily ate. The blonde simply gobbled up everything that came his way, and the girls were simply shocked that the boy was eating so quickly and thought it incredible. Suddenly, the blonde notices that the girl is looking at him strangely and asks for forgiveness for her behavior at the table. but she says that everything is fine because he is a man and this is normal for him. The girl is going to forgive him all minor offenses because the main character is humanity's only hope for salvation. In the next shot, the blonde is already sitting on the sofa with a huge belly, realizing that he ate too much food. He didn't understand how he should now digest all this, but suddenly someone called the young master to his place. PlayStation with him in order to have a good rest after a hearty lunch. Of course, the main character happily agrees to her offer. The blonde thought that this was exactly what he needed after such a hard day. Playing Fortnite with a girl was simply incredible. Finally, the main character understands that he does not regret being reborn in another world, given that now he lives in a palace with all the services. Also, a beautiful woman is sitting next to him right now and playing games, just a real dream of every man. A girl has never treated him so well before, and suddenly the boy thanks the lady with pink hair. Elle was incredibly happy because the boy is the first person who thanked her for her work, and now she wants to get to know the guy better, and for the main character to talk about his mysterious past. Suddenly, while playing Fortnite, he addresses her by name and talks about how in a past life, girls never treated him like a person. Suddenly, the boy has a strange feeling as if the whole world is looking down on him, and the girl with pink hair notices that the main character is unpleasant to talk about his past. The blonde asked her forgiveness for being so scared, but she said that everything was fine and she wanted to hear the continuation of this story. He recalled how all the time people mocked him and said that he would be a fat loser all his life. Even when he wasn't doing anything, people treated him like trash and saw him as a danger because of his scary face, which is why he was alone all the time. World could be, and he simply learned to live with all this pain when he was despised. The girl tried to find out how hard it was for the boy. Of course, it was not easy to live every day in a place where he was hated. But despite all the terrible things, he believed until the last that one day the day would come when he would completely change. From all these words, the girl began to tremble, but the blonde could not understand what had happened and tried to help her somehow. He couldn't understand why the girl was crying, but after hearing the main character's story, she remembered that those men who lived in this country took advantage of the fact that men here are like an endangered species, and therefore did what they wanted. With tears in her eyes, the girl says that it was all terrible, but it seems that today was the day when Elle met a worthy guy with a difficult fate. The main character hugs the girl and she begins to cry even more, because today all the men in this damn country were simply terrible. Both of them now understand that it was far from an easy path, but in each other's company they felt as comfortable as possible. Suddenly the girl looks at the main character and asks him to try delicious pastries that are only made in the royal castle. She immediately began to worry that the boy would not like the food she had prepared, but he asked her not to worry, because this was the most delicious thing he had eaten in his entire life. The main character decides that he also needs to cook something in order to repay her for her kindness, and wants to cook something too. She was simply shocked when she saw the culinary abilities of the main character, because she did not think that a man could cook such a complex dish. Suddenly the girl simply smiled at him and asked him to prepare a cake for her. The main character was surprised by such a request, because he had never prepared something like that before. Of course, the result is not very good, but the girl asks not to worry the boy because he himself does not know how to bake cakes. But in her heart, she still thought that this was an annoying situation because she wanted a cake. The main character touched her head so that she would not be so upset and said that he would definitely improve his cooking skills in order to prepare for Elle the most delicious cake of her life. Finally, on the 5th attempt, he succeeded in making a cake that was incredibly tasty, and the girl was incredibly happy and praised the main character for trying so hard for her. The main character himself was also shocked that he had a talent for cooking, and he didn't even suspect it. But for the sake of a beautiful girl, he was able to do it. The girl understood that the main character was too overdone, and realizing that he was good at cooking, he continued to make more and more baked goods, and Elle could not keep up with him, and thought that she would gain extra calories from so many baked goods. Suddenly, a girl with short hair began to walk around the castle because she heard the sounds of intense cooking, but did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, she saw the main character and decided to ask why he was not sleeping at such a late hour. The girl with pink hair was clearly uncomfortable with the fact that she forced the boy to cook food for her because he was a guest of this castle, and she should not have barged into his chambers and talked to him. Now Elle thought that she was a real selfish person because the main character had to fulfill a great mission and revive the whole state, and she just came to him with her problems. But instead of swearing at the girl, he hugged her, and despite the fact that he acted very selfishly, he still admits that he liked Elle. From these words, the girl was ready to cry again and invited the main character to continue their culinary show and bake as many pastries as possible. The guys decided that it would be a great idea to play Monopoly, and after that, an incredible game began with delicious pastries prepared by our main character. After they finished playing Monopoly, the main character decided to take a walk around the castle and eventually reached the room where the queen was. Meanwhile, the girl was simply combing her hair and said that she just wanted to talk to our boy. She asked the main character to quickly pass, but the main character certainly could not expect that he would be called to the queen's room at such a late hour. She thought it was wonderful that the boy decided to bake and play Monopoly with Elle. The queen was finally convinced that the main character was the man from the legends who was destined to save her people from extinction. Our hero did not understand what the girl was talking about and decided to ask again. But the girl said that in their state there really is a legend that one day a man will appear who will be destined to save the people of the Nile. It was the supreme goddess who transported our hero to this world at the beginning of the story, who turned out to be a witch who uttered a great prophecy, and now the blonde man came to their castle. Finally, everything became clear to the main character, and he was going to leave the girl. But she asked him to wait because there was another reason why she invited him here. It turns out that the girl also really loves baking, and she asked the main character to prepare some kind of cake for her while he was on the castle grounds. Of course. The boy was simply shocked by the words that she said, because the queen was standing before his eyes, and if he prepared bad baked goods for her, she would most likely order his execution. But she clearly had a different opinion. She has been living in this damned royal castle since her birth, and has never even gone out into the city. And therefore, more than anything else, she wanted to try the pastries that our blonde would cook. All this time in the castle, she didn't even have friends, and she didn't know what it was like to cook together. Of course, the boy doesn't like this idea because she's a queen and he's not from this world at all, but still he agrees to such an adventure. The girl couldn't believe that she finally had a friend with whom she could cook a lot of delicious food together and then play Monopoly, and she asks that the main character stay with her forever in this castle. They finished preparing the cake, and now all that remained was to put it in the oven. The queen did not know the time in which the cake should be prepared, so she asked the main character to pull it out of the oven when the cake was ready. Suddenly, a night girl with white hair appears, and the guys immediately stop cooking. The queen tells her that she will definitely reward the girl for bringing the main character to their castle, and the girl with white hair was very happy about this. But she did not specify what her reward would be, and the queen simply gives her the chef's hat, saying that now she will cook with them. The queen asked her to carefully monitor the culinary process, but the girl had been a knight all her life and she was afraid to take on such responsibility. She, too, was able to feel what it was like to cook food in the company of friends and thought that she simply did not deserve such a reward from her queen. But the queen asked her not to be so stupid, because she was an elite knight in her castle for many years and now deserves to relax with her friends playing Monopoly. She had a lot of fun playing the game with her friends and decided to thank the queen for giving her the opportunity to have a good time and feel happy. The blonde couldn't understand why the girl started crying with joy, and so she decided to offer to play another round of Monopoly because they had nothing else to do anyway. The night girl was very happy with such a gift from the queen, and she said that she was glad that the knight liked spending time with them. The queen's eyes even began to shine because the main character had prepared baked goods for them so well, but she asked him to spend such evenings with them as often as possible. Our main character tried to sleep peacefully, but the thought that the queen had asked him could not disappear in his head because he would not be able to spend such evenings all the time. Suddenly, the action is transferred to some girl who put a note in the bird's mouth and released it high into the sky. In this note, she begged for the supreme goddess to hear her prayers and finally help them. The next morning came and the main character came to wake up his personal assistant Elle, telling the master that it was high time to wake up. The queen urgently wanted to see the main character, but he clearly didn't want to wake up after yesterday's party with baking and Monopoly. Suddenly, he wakes up like a ghost and tells Elle to move away from him and not touch him for a while because he is terribly tired. The girl began to worry that the boy was unwell and tried to find out what was happening to him, but he was not going to explain anything and simply asked to move away from him. But the girl's kindness turned out to be much stronger, and looking at the main character, she saw that he was lying covered in cold sweat and with a terribly high temperature. Touching his forehead, she practically burned herself and could not believe that a person could have such a high temperature. The main character asks for forgiveness for the fact that he got sick, and the girl was confused and, not knowing what to do, decided to turn to the queen. Maybe she knows what is happening to him. She threw a robe over him and asked him to walk as carefully as possible, and she would help him get to the royal hall. Passing by the rest of the employees, they turned to the main character, thinking that he was walking like a living zombie from The Walking Dead. Having caught all these looks on himself, the main character felt even worse than before, because in his past life they never paid attention to him, and now a crowd of girls are just looking at him. Elle noticed that the boy was getting worse every second and asked him to be patient a little because they had almost reached the throne room. Entering the hall, the queen was surprised that they came so quickly, but the girl with pink hair did not come with good news. She was surprised because the main character was somehow standing leaning on the door, and Elle didn't know how to help him. The main character began to complain that he was terribly hot, and the queen said that her plan had finally worked. The blonde could not understand what the girl really meant. Elle was worried about the boy, and the queen said that she did not expect it to have such a strong effect on the boy, but he still did not understand what this damned woman had done to him. But she says that all the food that the young master eats actually had special additives that enhance the strength and agility of the one who eats them. Elle was simply in shock because the queen didn't tell them anything at all, and the main character began asking about those damn supplements that she gave him. The queen told him that there was nothing wrong with this. This is the most ordinary potion that gives him a surge of energy, acts like a regular energy drink, and the effect will soon go away. Elle was happy about this, but the main character still had questions. The queen says that his questions will wait because the boy has guests with whom he needs to meet. This girl's name is Miss Saris, and she really wants to talk with our main character. The queen warned that during the conversation, they would leave the room and would not eavesdrop, so the main character need not worry too much. In parting, she whispered to our hero that the queen was counting on him to fulfill his destiny from the legend and help her revive her people. As soon as they were left alone, Miss Saris began to worry that the boy looked unwell, but the blonde said that he would be fine. Since the girl decides not to delay the conversation and says that the queen said that a certain Mr. Sug now lives in her castle. She also said that he was the savior of their country who arrived from another world. She always wanted her to have a small child, but only her husband did not understand this. Her husband was a terribly rich old guy who loved to play Monopoly. He was never interested in his wife, but only in playing Monopoly. She said that over time, her husband began to play Monopoly more and more, and over time he had several more wives, but he did not intend to have children. He loved to blindfold her like she was Gojo Satoru and threw stones at her so that the girl could not even dodge. In general, her husband was just a terrible person from whom she ran away, and even remembering his name, she was ready to vomit. The main character thought that this was a real nightmare and thought that the girl was incredibly strong because she found the strength in herself to escape from this freak. Saris was terribly scared and just started crying because after her husband, she had not met any other guys, and now she thought that all men were freaks like him. The main character could not believe that stones were simply thrown at such a beautiful girl as her, but he was too immersed in his thoughts, and the girl decided to return him to reality with a loud scream. She touched the main character's hand and could not believe that he could walk with such a terrible temperature. Suddenly, the boy just looks at her, and because of his illness, he cannot even speak normally. But now he wants to prove to this girl that there are many amazing men in the world who are fundamentally different from her husband. The main character again presented himself in the image of Superman, who once again saves the beautiful lady and swears that he will never allow anyone to treat her so horribly again. The boy says that in fact the girl is incredibly beautiful and definitely did not deserve such a terrible attitude towards herself. He wants her to understand that he is different from her husband. Such beautiful words have never been spoken to the girl, and now she is completely confused and doesn't even know what to do in such a situation. It was as if an angel and a demon appeared on her shoulders. The angel was afraid that this guy would turn out to be the same as her husband, and the demon thought that she should take a risk because the girl had absolutely nothing to lose from this. But when she was next to the main character, she felt completely different than next to her husband who throws stones at her. The girl was not at all scared because she felt comfortable next to this guy. Until that moment, she had never been told such pleasant words that a girl could be so beautiful. Our boy decides it would be a great idea for him to play Monopoly with her, so that Saris can realize that he too can have a good time in the company of other people. He looks at her intently and says that no one will ever throw a stone at her again, because now she is completely safe on the castle grounds playing Monopoly with him. The girl was clearly in shock and remembered that she had a husband, but the main character was simple so that she would forget about him once and for all, because she would never return to this freak. Saris accepted that the main character treated her so well, and while they were playing Monopoly, she realized that she always needed to just run away from her past life. After they finished playing Monopoly, the main character touched his forehead and realized that his temperature had returned to normal. The lady also woke up and wished the main character good morning. Despite the fact that the queen said that no one would eavesdrop on their conversation, a whole crowd of servants gathered right in front of the doors to the room and listened attentively to their game of Monopoly.